This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 319.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, Ramsey Majaba, in case you didn't know that. I am a solutions specialist out of Ottawa, Canada, and I'm an SE coach. I basically love talking about sales engineering. And I wanted to do a special episode today for two reasons. The topic of today is how to prepare for a demo. And I wanted to talk about this for two reasons. One, a month or so ago, I was on one of Chris White's mastermind sessions from the 6 Habits certification. And that was one of the topics that we discussed, like how do you prepare for a demo, which got me thinking. But also, most recently, one of my SEs worked on an interview demo for, an interview, obviously. And they got, the attendees, the SE manager, SEs, salespeople who were on the call, provided her instant feedback, which she shared with me. And I wanted to share that feedback with you because I think it would be useful to you. It's beneficial. So let me start with the feedback and related to this. The thing about interview demos and customer demos, they're very similar in the sense of how you prepare. It's just for customer demos, you might need to do it faster. There's an expectation that you know the product a lot more. In the interview demos, these could be demo something that you like or demo our product. Like that's the employer saying, demo our product. If you demo something you like, that should be easier. If you demo the employers, the interviewers' product, that's a little bit more difficult because you're basically demoing the product that the SE manager, the SEs, the salespeople have done or seen the demos so many times in the past, and they have their way of doing things. So you may come in with different ways of thinking or different ways of doing things that they may like or not like. But the preparation is the same. And I will touch on the details. Now, I wanted to talk about the feedback that my SE received after she did the presentation or the demo. One, the session was very engaging. Great. That's always a positive. You want to hear that feedback from the customers. The length is good. She received great feedback about the tell, show, ask system or methodology or process that I use and I teach. And I've talked about this on a different YouTube video in the past, but tell, show, ask, if you're familiar with the demo to wins methodology, which is tell, show, tell, I've just modified the last tell and changed it into ask. So basically, you tell them what you're about to show them, you show them what you wanted to show them, and then you ask questions about it. That way you get engagement, which is why they said the session is very engaging, versus telling them again where you just showed them. In the demo, she had to do a dashboard, and again, we'll dig into this a little bit deeper. They enjoyed the way she presented it, and I will talk about that. The actionable feedback, something that she should improve on, is they asked her a technical questions. Can this integrate with that, for example? And her response was, I will double check. And the feedback that she got, which makes sense, is you should have asked why you want that. So whether this is an interview or a customer demo, if you're asked, can you do this? The best response is, why do you need it? I mean, if you can, you should say yes. Why? If you can, then you should do a small discovery and figure out why they need it. Maybe there's something else that you can help with. One thing I teach in my demos, and maybe that's a sales thing that I like to do, but at the end of the demo, you want to figure out next steps, and it goes with the flow as you're going as an SE to ask, what are the next steps? generally speaking, a lot of SEs, what they do is they finish their things and then they look towards the salesperson who comes in and asks, what are the next steps? When I was an SE, even now, I want my SE to ask that question because it flows and it's coming from them. And they were, for some reason, shocked, the managers and the SEs, to hear that question from her. But they proved my point because they said they were shocked, but they loved it that she asked that question. They called it confronting question. And they said it's basically good for them to figure out if it's a yay or nay before they wrap up the session, which is good. There's a lot of work we did about the flow, which I'll discuss in a second. So that's the feedback. One thing that I talked to her about, this is useful for regular demos, but also useful for interview demos. So we did 3 dry runs in our thing, and the last dry run was a few hours before the actual interview. And when we did the dry run, the last dry run, which was supposed to be an act, like, hey, this is as close to reality as it's going to be, she didn't have the presentation. She had something else open when she shared her screen. So the tip that I provide her is have everything ready. Even if you're going on site, have the window that you want to show first on, and that way you can open up your laptop, start, and it's right there. And she was said, oh no, don't worry, I'm going to be there half hour early, I'll be able to set up. I told her either way, set it up. And she said basically, you were 100% right, because even though I was early, they didn't let me into the room until it was time, and then I had to get started right away. So having the presentation tab open ahead of time worked for her. But even there, when you're doing that, like, don't connect your laptop. If you're in person at the customer site or at the interview site, don't connect your laptop ahead of time. Or yeah, actually that's what I want to say. Bring everything up, everything you want to show. Log into your demo environment before you connect the laptop. So that's the feedback that she received. And if I was doing this presentation live in person, I would say, like, hey, what would you take out of it? But we're not in person. You're far away. Or you might actually be like right next door. Not sure. But I hope you take something. I would love to hear from you. Send me a message, comment on YouTube, whatever it is, or LinkedIn. What is your takeaway just from this feedback that you received? Now, how do we start preparing for the demo? It's a whole different process to prepare for the demo. If you're doing an interview process and you don't know the product, then you're gonna have to spend some time playing around with it. You're gonna have to install it. You're gonna have to upload data if it's a data-oriented solution. If it's a firewall, you're gonna have to configure filters and what's it called, ACLs, access control lists. Basically, you're gonna have to install the product. If this is something you do on a daily basis, then you might want to skip that. Now, what I like to start with is the problem summary slide, and this is something I learned from Chris White. Even if it's not the first thing I show in the demo, this is the basis for everything I'm working on. Now, if you're doing this as a customer demo, this should be based on the discovery calls. Whether you had this discovery calls with your customer or with your account manager because you weren't involved in the customer discovery right away. And you can list 10 problems on the problem slide. But as you go through, you're going to have to figure out, like, how do I combine these? Because you don't need necessarily to show something for every single problem that they mentioned. Some of these problems could be a combination and could have it might be a technical problem, but the business, like 5 technical problems, 1 business problem. Right? I would list the business problems. So I would list them, and I know that my end goal is to touch on these problems. With the problem slide, I need to know who I'm talking to as well. Now, if you're doing an interview, the problem slide might be like assumptions on your end. You're going to assume the personas that you're going to talk to and assume the problems that you're trying to solve. If this is a customer demo, you know the customers in theory, right? When you show up, there might be some added people there. And then you know the problems based on your discussions with the customer or the salesperson. Now, so that's the problem set. The second thing I do, keep in mind that I was a generalist SE. I had knowledge in one product line that's very well, like one product line that's like a million different permutations, different technologies, and all that. So I knew that very well. I played with the software at the time, but I didn't play a lot. But there were other product lines where I didn't know very well, and I'll have to spend some more time playing with it. And what I mean by playing is actually playing, like just clicking on buttons, seeing what they do, seeing how I can flow, trying to break it basically. Because I come from a support background, my goal is to break stuff for some reason. So the more you know it, the less you play, the less you know it, the more you play. And now that I have features working, or there's a new feature I'm working on, that's sometime I'm gonna have to spend some time on that. And I'm trying to figure out what's interesting to my customers and what's not. And also I'm trying to figure out like where do I get errors if I get any. I don't always get errors, but if I do, I'm gonna try to figure out how I got here. So that's something I don't go and do during the demo. If you're in an interview demo, you're gonna play a lot more. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're into technology, you probably enjoy playing with technology. So that's not so bad. Now, as I played around and I saw what's interesting, now I am trying to create a story. These are the people I'm talking to, and this is when you get to be creative. You create storylines to show like how you can take persona A on their hero's journey. You're currently in this situation, you're doing okay, but then tomorrow something's gonna break, and this is how you're gonna go into a funk or a dip, and then you're gonna overcome that and become the hero. So how do I do that? Like when, let's say I'm talking to a CISO, I start thinking about what they care about, what keeps them up at night. Well, a lot of salespeople ask that question. Well, what keeps you up at night? It's not a very creative question, but it's a question nonetheless. Now, you might not want to ask it, but you might want to imagine what their day is like. And the more experience you have, the easier this becomes. The less experience you have, you can talk to people who have the experience. You don't always have to have the experience. You can have the experience by proxy. If you're in an interview demo, then case studies. You can go on the employer's website and download case studies and read them, because these will tell you the stories that you can talk about. So now that I know, like I'm trying to take the CISO from this point to that point, now I need to create the flow of the demo. And the flow could be like where I start, where I end. It could be what am I going to show on the dashboard, and how am I going to go through it. In our case, for the interview demo that we did, she had 3 problems she wanted to go through. So the way I worked with her was, I did 3 dry runs with her. First one was all about the presentation. Second one was about what she's going to show in the demo. And the third one was to just practice the demo one more time. So when we did the second presentation, or the second dry run, where we talked about what she's going to show in the demo, she had 3 separate tabs, 3 separate dashboards or reports to show for the customer. Now, if you're creating a flow, that means you're going to have to go between this slide, or from the slide to the first dashboard, and then you have to jump to the second dashboard, and then you're gonna have to jump through the third dashboard. So what we did was we combined all three together, and we put each line as its problem. Like instead of having three separate dashboards with each dashboard has 3 or 4 graphs, we condensed the graphs into 2 graphs per problem and put them all in one dashboard. And now the dashboard had 3 lines that showed problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. So it's not only the flow of like what you're going to click, but it's the flow of how you're going to show the problem. Like, we're not going to show the problem in 3 separate tabs. We're going to show them all in one tab. We're going to put line A, line B, line C, or column A, column B, column C. This is all part of the flow. And then what we discussed, like, all right, now we talk about like, start from the end and then go back. Hey, this is the dashboard. This is the most important thing that you want to see. But you want to see how we got there, right? That's the question. And if they say yes, we have to show the flow of how we did that. And something that Brian Geary talks about, and Brian Geary, he's been on the podcast. He also is a consultant for demos, and he likes to script demos. He's a very script heavy person. He talks about the accordion principle. I think he calls it. I know he calls it accordion. I don't know if he says principle, but I'm gonna dub it the accordion principle, which means when you build a demo, you have to build it in such a way that you can remove pieces of it or add pieces to it, depending on who's in the audience and the questions that are being asked. So that's all part of the flow. When you play it around, you know what you can show, what's important, what's not important. You know what you can remove and not show, or you know what you can tentatively say, all right, I'm going to put this aside, and if someone asks, I'm going to show this. So all of this is part of the flow. We have the stories, we're going to go through the flow, and when we're doing the flow, we're clicking the clicks, right? This is what I'm going to show, this is how I'm going to click the buttons, and this is what I'm going to say. So part of the flow is also the script. And it's a very loose script initially. It's just babbling. It could be. It's a brain dump. This is what I'm going to show, this is the flow, this is what the problem they're solving. Kind of like that, And you say quite often, Anyways. So once you go through the flow, we know exactly what we want to show. You know how we want to get there. Now we have to talk about the script. And the script is basically a combination of the flow and the stories. And what's the impactful statements that I'm going to say? How can I get them to the aha moment? How do I get the 2 clicks to wow? All these different things. And also part of the script is creating the vision building questions. So we talk about tell, show, ask. The ask part, you have to ask vision building questions. The question when you're doing the tell, show, ask is not, is that clear? Once you ask, is that clear? You're probably going to hear nothing in response. You're going to have to ask vision building questions. How do you see yourself using this in your environment? Right? Or, John, how do you think that will help you? Mary, how would you use that? Right? All these are part of the script. And we're trying to find the aha or light bulb moments, if you will. We're trying to get I'm going to say this, and there should be the wow here. So we're writing that. And then what I do on my own is practice it. I'm going to practice. Again, this is in an ideal case scenario when you have time to prepare for all this. So if you don't have the time to prepare and do everything that I'm saying, you might have to skip some steps. If you're doing the same demo over and over, then you might not need to practice. But, you do. One thing that my client mentioned that we had to inject into her flow and her story was the humor. A lot of us are, when you're doing an interview demo, you're so focused on knowing the product and worrying about knowing the product, answering the questions, that we forget that we're talking to humans and not robots. And a lot of brand new SEs, when they're demoing to customers, feel the same way. They're more worried about relaying the information or providing as much information as possible rather than connecting on a human level. Even when you're remote, we're trying to connect on a human level with the customer. Because if we can connect on a human level, they will always invite us to ask or to answer more questions. Always might be generalization, right? If you connect with them but never answered any of their actual problems, then it's not very. They will not invite you back. They might like you, but they might not invite you back. So I'm not saying just make sure that they like you and don't worry about what you provide. No, you have to be answering their questions, not the ones that they're asking in the demo. I mean, you have to answer those, but also the things that they asked in the discovery, what they're worried about, answering the questions about their problems. So I'll practice it, and I'm very critical of myself. Chris White talks about like over preparing or under preparing. I don't over prepare like what I'm gonna show in the demo. I over prepare my performance of that demo. I want to know it, and I want to know that if someone tries to trip me up, I'll be able to always get back. It's like if you're doing a dance. I'm not a very good dancer, but I used to do traditional Lebanese dancing, and if someone messes up in front of me, I need to still be able to get back to what I was doing. And that's what I'm when I talk about be critical of yourself and see what's working, see what's not. If you're getting bored from the sound of your own voice, then something is weird. And then start thinking about what can I remove? Like if we talk about the accordion principle, what is there's a concept in movies that I've heard of is no wasted frames. When you're doing the demo, you don't want to waste frames. You don't want to waste attention cycles because they're very hard to grasp from the customer side. So what can I remove to maintain the customer's attention? So always be asking yourself that question. And when you're going through it, if you haven't asked yourself yet, the question should always be, so what? And like you might have to ask yourself, so what, 5 times, and when you're done, you're gonna have to ask yourself, who cares? If you ask so what 5 times and the answer who cares is some engineer was never gonna be on the call, then that's something you can remove from the demo. I've been in demos where a fire alarm came on and I had to wait for the fire alarm to obviously get turned off, and the amount of time was not added. Like I didn't have an extra 10 minutes. I had to remove things from the demo. What can be removed in the middle of the demo? Or if they ask a lot of questions, what can I remove? If I'm asked a question, I'm anticipating questions about this, what can I add to answer that? Can I show anything? Right? Chris, again, we talk about the concept of like, if you're asked a question that you haven't prepared for, you can answer it verbally. But it will be nice if you do prepare for it and answer it. Might not be in the initial demo flow or how they have. I keep going back to movies. They have the director's or the studio cut, and then you might have the director's cut with an additional deleted scenes. That could be part of the deleted scenes that you just inject in the demo when you're asked the question. Now, once you do all this, I want to do a dry run with my account manager. If you're doing an interview, always ask for a dry run with the manager or someone on the team. Most companies provide that, some don't, but ask for it nonetheless. If they don't do a dry run with you, then it is what it is. Do a dry run with one of your friends. Reach out to me. I did again 3 dry runs with my client, with my SE, for this one. But if you're already an SE and if you already have a job, you're not looking for another job, and you want to demo to the customer, make sure you do a dry run with the account manager, if time permits. Why do I want to do a dry run with my account manager? One, it removes the jitter for me. I'm always horrible doing a dry run with my account manager. Like I'm dry, my sense of humor is not there. It's just I fumble my speech. I don't know exactly what I'm gonna say. But when I actually do the demo, all this jitter went away. Also, when I do the dry run with the manager, I make sure with the account manager, I make sure that they're aware of what I'm going to do, so they don't ask me something in the middle of the demo that I haven't prepared for. Right? I do the demo, Mr. or Mrs. Account Manager or Account Executive, RSM, whatever you want to call them. Would you want me to add or remove anything from this demo? Do you think this covers what the customer wants? Yes? Great. No? What do you want me to add? Great. Well, we're going to add that. And also, as an SE, so many times I've heard of horror stories where the SEs get blamed after they do the demo. Even if it's perfect, they get blamed for the customer not wanting to go to the next steps. So now they've done the dry run with you. They should know exactly what's going to be in the demo. And if they think you're going to lose the deal, then they should say that in there, so you can fix it. And now they can't blame you, especially if it's recorded and you have that information. And then lastly, do the demo, which is always the funnest part of our thing. That's the process that I go through, and that's the process I took my SE through in the interview demo to get the feedback that I mentioned at the beginning of this call, of this podcast. And I know it's good because she got an offer. She got the feedback. The feedback is useless without the offer. She got the offer, and she did a very good job. So I wanted to share that with you. I figured it's timely. If you have a different way of preparing for your demo, if you're doing demo every hour on the hour and you don't have time to prepare, I'm curious to how you actually prepared the first one so you can get to action. Is it good? That's the first question I have. Is your demo actually good? If not, why not? These are things that I think about and I like to share. So that's it. If you want help, whether you're currently an SE, I'm mainly taking SEs who are looking to improve at this point. So if you're an SE and you want to get feedback from your customer about your demos, come join me. My other client, he had the problem. He came in and wanted to work on the demos, and we never touched it because it was his discovery that was bad. So keep in mind that even if you think your demos are the ones that are causing you pain, that will not be the case. So you might be looking in the wrong spot. That's it. What do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know. Show notes for this episode will be on show 318. 318 or 319? Give me a second. I'll check. 319. This is going to be on episode 319. And with that, I am signing off.